Welcome back, everyone. For today's video, we are going to be taking a look at game number 1 of the grand finals here in the American Cup. Now, I was the winner of the winner's bracket. However, there is a player who can come from the loser's bracket to challenge me once again. Now, yesterday, Fabiano, Caruana, and Levon Aroni had a barn burner of a match. They played a couple of rapid games, finally some blitz games before Fabiano emerged as the winner, and that means that I am playing Fabiano once again. Now, the format is quite straightforward. We're playing 2 games of classical chess. Fabiano has to win this classical match, even if it goes to tie breaks, and then if he wins that, we'll get a second match, which we'll play the following day of rapid. So I basically have 2 lives, but in this final classical match where I have the white pieces last game, I want to try and put some pressure on Fabiano, unlike the last time we played. So let's jump right into the action. So the game starts out with the move d4. Fabiano plays d5. We get c4, e6, knight f3, knight f6. And once again, I play my classic old man's chess with the Catalan system, playing g3 to fianchetto the bishop to g2. Fabiano takes, I go bishop g2, and now he plays move a6. Now, obviously, in our prior match, Fabiano played the move knight to c6, and after queen a4, bishop b4, bishop d2, bishop d6, I played the move castles, Fabiano castled, bishop c3, a6, and the game would end in a very premature draw after b5 takes, bishop d7, queen b7, rook b8, and we get a big repetition, or white will lose the queen. So, Fabiano decides to play the move a6 today. I castle, he plays knight c6, and now I play the move knight bd2. Now you might be thinking, what is going on here? White has sacrificed a pawn on c4. You're also sacrificing potentially a second pawn on d4. But the great thing about chess is that material sometimes doesn't matter. It's much more about the development. And here white has fianchettoed the bishop, castled the king out of the middle, and if black tries to grab a second pawn, white is actually completely fine here with this great Catalan bishop on the diagonal, and black having all these pieces which are simply not developed. So, Fabiano plays the move b5 here, guarding the pawn on c4, and now I play the move b3. Now, in the Catalan systems, there are many situations where you try to sacrifice a pawn for play. One sample line is something like takes, knight b3, bishop e7, bishop b2. Let's say black goes bishop d7, and after a move like queen b1, castles, and e4, even though black has an extra pawn on c7, you have the big white center with the pawns on e4 and d4, the rook coming to d1, as well as the double op combo, so white is doing very well. So therefore, Fabiano plays c3, I go knight b1, b4, a3, and now he plays move bishop b7. Now the first thing that's really good about this opening is that it is clear that I've outprepared Fabiano. He's using his time while I am still in my opening book. So I play the move knight to e5, and now Fabiano plays the move c2 after a 10-minute think. There are a couple options for black to play here, but Fabiano was looking for something to simplify immediately. So he goes c2. Here I play bishop takes knight, checking the king. This is a very important maneuver, by the way, because in this position, if I were to play the move queen takes c2 here, now black can go knight takes pawn, attacking the queen, which means I don't have time to capture the juicer on b7. And when I play a move like queen c4 after takes, and queen d5 check here, white has to trade the queens, and now black is up a pawn in this position, and you've got these knights in the middle of the board, and black is probably winning. So I have to take the knight with check. Fabiano captures, I take the pawn, now we get bishop e4, and here I play the move queen b2. Now on first glance, it probably looks like black should be better here. You've got the 2 b's, the bishop combination, and white is missing the fianchettoed bishop, so the king looks potentially very weak on these light squares. Now, that being said, even though it looks kind of dangerous, after Fabiano plays bishop b7, I can always play a move like f3 to slam the door shut on this long diagonal, and even though I'm missing my fianchettoed bishop, I'm still doing quite well. So Fabi plays bishop b7, I decide to trade here, and now I play the move bishop d2. Now I could have played the move f3, slamming the door shut on the diagonal, and after castles, maybe I can play something like e4 with the idea of bishop to e3, but in the long run here with the 2 b's, I have to do something very quickly, or else I'm going to struggle on the king side. So after bishop takes b4, I play the move bishop to d2, and here Fabiano goes c5 after a very long think. Now Fabiano was already burning a lot of time at this point in the game, but it's worth noting that the more your opponent thinks, the more confident you start to feel, because a player like Fabiano is very much about momentum, and if he's using a lot of time in the opening, it means that he's uncomfortable and he's not happy with his position. So Fabiano plays c5 after a 20-minute think, and now I play the move knight d3. Now this move might not be the best move here, but I was really happy with this decision simply because I want to create clarity, and I'm playing for a position where the game will drag on for a long time, and if we get to an endgame, maybe I can make use of the time. Now, another move that I considered was rook to c1 here, trying to attack the pawn, but after knight to e4 and bishop e3, even though the computer gives white a big advantage in this position with the bishop and the queen, I was worried about moves like knight g5, trying to go knight h3 to attack the king, and then maybe even something like f6 and e5, building this chain of 3, and black is actually probably better. So I go knight d3. Fabiano plays queen d5, lining up the double A battery and trying to checkmate the king. Now I go f3, no checkmate anymore, and Fabiano trades the bishops and takes the pawn on d4. Now in this position, black is temporarily up a pawn here on d4, but there are many lines in the Catalan where you're missing a central pawn, but it's not a big deal here because the pawn on a6 can always be targeted, the pawn on d4 can be targeted, and at this point with nearly a 45-minute time advantage, I was feeling really, really groovy about everything because I can relax and try to play for 2 results. 2 results meaning no danger of losing, and if Fabiano ever slips on a banana peel, I will probably win the game. So I play rook c1. Fabiano castles. Here I play rook to a4, targeting the pawn on d4, and now we got the move rook d8. Now rook fc1 was a very nuanced move here, by the way, because initially I wanted to go knight c5, but after bishop d5, knight takes a6, and king to e7, in this endgame, the bomb cloud is very effective for black. The king stays close to all the action here in the middle of the board, and black has no issues whatsoever. So when I go rook fc1, Fabiano castles. Now the king is a little bit further away from the center of the board. We get rook a4, rook d8, and now I play the move rook c7, creating the classic kebab on the 7th rank. Now at this point, I thought I was much better here. The computer actually does not give a big advantage to white, but with the time advantage and just the general situation, I thought I had good chances. So we get rook d7. Now I decide to trade the rooks, and this is just a simply very poor decision by me. With 40 minutes on the clock against 13 minutes here, I should have used more time. And if I'd used more time, I almost certainly would have played the move rook a c4, protecting the rook on c7, but now there are a lot of tricks here. For example, if black plays a move like h6, I can go knight to e5, and after takes, suddenly the pawn and the bishop are under attack. There's also the idea of trading and rook c7 to hit the bishop and the knight, and now these knights are very, very active here, and black has all kinds of problems. But I play rook d7 after a 2-minute thing, and this is simply a very, very bad practical decision here because now Fabiano, even though he's way down on time, can simply set up a bit of a fortress. So I take back the pawn, we get bishop c6, knight c4, and now Fabiano plays move a5. Now this is the first step, I think, of Fabiano going the wrong direction. Had he simply played the move bishop to b5 here, setting up this great wooden shield where the bishop is hitting all the diagonals, I really don't know how I would have proven an advantage. He goes a5. Now I play the move king to f2, and Fabiano goes king f8, and here I play the move rook d6. We got bishop b5, knight a3, and now Fabiano takes knight on d3. Now you're probably thinking even material, game should be a draw, but like in many games that I play, this is an endgame where only white can be better because my knight has a lot of squares, you have a weak pawn on a5, and as we're about to see, bishops are not always better than knights. So we got bishop a6. Now after the game, Fabiano thought he should have played the move bishop to g6, and after rook b7 and f6 with ideas like e5 and bishop f7 just to set it up, black should be completely fine here, but Fabiano plays bishop a6 instead. Now I go rook to d6, and even though the position is still probably equal, black has some serious practical issues to resolve. Now the big problem for black is that this bishop on the diagonal, it might look very nice, but black struggles to find squares. You'll notice that all 3 of these squares are covered, king guards the pawn, and black has to be very careful. So we get king e7, I go rook c6, and now Fabiano plays king f6. Now apparently here, after king to e8, it's still maybe close to a draw, I guess because after rook c6, there's bishop b7, and here with the king on e8 versus e7, there's no longer a kebab with rook c7 to win the game. So after king e7, rook c6, if black goes here, there's check, winning the bishop. Fabiano goes king f6, and now I play the move rook c5, attacking the pawn. Fabi plays bishop b7, and here I play the move pawn to e4. Now initially I thought I could play the move knight c4 attacking this pawn, but after the move bishop to d5, I thought that after rook takes a5 and rook to b8 here, it simply wasn't enough to win the game. Now the computer thinks this endgame is still very good for white. I actually thought this endgame was probably a draw, to be honest, with 5 versus 4, and additionally in a rook and pawn endgame here, Fabiano's time will not come into play because all of his moves are too easy. So I go e4 here, taking away the square from the bishop to target the pawn, and now Fabiano plays the move a4. Now this move is a mistake here from Fabiano. At this point, it's very tough to play, but probably rook to a6 still would have saved the game because black can play for both a4 and rook b6 targeting the pawn. If these pawns ever come off the board, black will be able to draw with all the pawns being on the same side. And if I play with like king e3, black here can go rook b6, and after rook b5, I believe that this endgame should be a draw. Of course, with 3 minutes on the clock like Fabiano had, you can't really know for sure, but this is the best practical chance. Instead, we get a4. I go b4, Fabiano plays rook d8, and here I play the move king to e2. Now, this move is a big mistake by me. I'm up 20 minutes on the clock here. You're probably thinking I'm on my way to victory. I know I'm much better here, but the thing is, you still have to be very precise. Now, I thought about going king to e3, but I was worried that Fabi would play rook to d1 and suddenly infiltrate with the rook on the back rank. Computer laughs in my face. It says after rook c7, rook to a1, apparently knight c2, rook a2, and knight d4 is winning, but I simply wasn't sure if this was winning after a move like e5. Oh, I've got knight e2, and apparently this is GG. I actually did not see this move knight to e2. Had I seen this, I would have played it, because if black was bishop a6, there's rook c6 winning the bishop. And if you go bishop a8, there's rook a7, bishop c6, rook a6, and now you pin the bishop and win the game. So I go king e2 instead, trying to stop Fabiano from entering on this d file. Now we get the move g5, and here I play the move rook c4. This is a move that I spent a lot of time on, by the way, because here, initially, I wanted to go b5, but after g4, black is desperately trying to open up the diagonal for the bishop, and I really wasn't sure what was going on. So I go rook c4. Now this guards the pawn, so if black ever plays g4, I can simply take with the rook guarding. And now Fabi plays h5. Here I go b5, rook guards the pawn, so there are no tricks, and the a4 pawn is hanging. So if a4 pawn is weak, rook guards the pawn at e4, and I have the kebab with rook c7. Fabi goes g4, and here I play the move f4, we get e5, and now I inexplicably play this move f5 after a 4-minute thing. Now this move is simply based on a pure miscalculation here. Had I played the move pawn takes pawn and king e3, there is almost no doubt that I would win this game within the next couple of moves, because now if black tries to go rook d1, I can simply play rook c7, followed by knight c4, say black takes. It's uh-oh spaghetti-o time with knight c4, king f5, and rook c5 here. If black blocks, there's knight d6 check, king e5, knight takes bishop, takes, a3, knight b3, and the pawn on a3 won't make it to the end of the board. So I should have played this. If I had done this, I would have won the game immediately. Instead, I played the move f5. Now, I spent 4 minutes, so I'm happy with my time usage, but this is simply a big mistake here, and there are a couple of reasons this is bad. The first reason this is bad is that black can play the move rook to c8 here, and this endgame after rook takes a4 and rook c3 is simply not clear. The rook can go to b3, the bishop is always targeting this pawn, and black has h4 as well. However, Fabiano very low on time. I did see rook c8, by the way, and so he plays the move h4. Now I go rook takes pawn, he takes, I take, and he plays the move rook h8. Now, initially, when we got to this position, I actually thought this was a forced win. The line that I saw was knight to c2, and after rook to h2 check, king to d3, rook g2, knight e3, rook takes g3, rook to a7. I thought I was winning. There's actually king g5 here, and black is fine. Goes to show how good my calculations were during this game. But fortunately for me, I also saw that after knight to c2, black can simply go rook to h3 right away. And now after knight e3, rook g3, I cannot go rook a7 to win the bishop because I hang the pawn. And here if I go king d3, now king g5, and if anybody is better, it's black with the king and the rook and the bishop all activated together. So I spent a lot of time here. Ultimately, I play the move knight to b1, and now Fabiano plays move rook h2 check. Here I go king d1, and Fabi plays rook h1, I go king c2, and now we get the move rook to e1. Now this is a huge mistake by Fabiano at this point in the game. Had he played the move rook to g1, he would have been able to save here, because now when I play the move knight to d2, there's a very important move, rook to g2, pinning the knight here on d2, so if I go rook a7, he takes e4, And when I go king d1, now black can simply start checking. And when I go king to e1, there's rook takes g3 here, because after rook to a7, there's rook to e3, checking the king. And after king f2, there's rook d3, attacking the knight, followed by rook d7, and now black saves the game. But luckily for me, Fabiano is very low on the clock at this point, and so here he plays the move rook to e1. Now I go knight to c3, guarding the pawn, and suddenly all the ideas with rook to a7 are back in play, and black is not even winning this pawn on g3 yet. So Fabi plays rook to e3, and now I play the move knight to d5 here. This is a move, I know the clock stopped working because I'm doing this in real time, where I had about 5 minutes versus Fabiano's 1 minute, and this is a move that I was very proud of myself for finding, because this simplifies the game into a simple situation where after bishop takes knight, pawn takes bishop, it's the b pawn versus the g pawn, and I correctly assess that my pawn is faster. So Fabiano plays rook takes g3. Now I play the move b6, and at this point the game ends immediately. Fabiano was down to his last seconds when he played this move. The best try here would have been to check on e2, and after king c3, check here in this position, king c4, check, king b3, check. Here, I believe that I have to go king b4. Maybe this isn't the winning line. Computer wants this one, and I thought actually that I would have to go to b4, and after rook takes g3, I simply wasn't sure if I was winning the game. Apparently, I can go to d3, and after rook b2, there's king c4, king takes f5, and now I have rook b4, because with the wide peepos, apparently I'm too fast, whereas black has one pawn, which can easily be stopped. Now, I did not see this. Would I have been able to find this in the game? It's anybody's guess whether I would have. But Fabiano just plays the move rook takes g3, and this move loses on the spot, because now after I play b6, my pawn is simply 2 squares from promoting to a queen. Black's pawn is 3 squares away, and what I think Fabiano missed here is that I'm actually able to build a bridge, because his rook on a4 is placed perfectly. So Fabiano plays rook g2, king c3, he checks, and now I go king c4, and in this position, Fabiano Caruana resigns the game here, because when he goes rook g1, I can play b7, and after, say, rook b1, I go rook b4 and king b5, and I'm promoting the pawn. And if he plays the move check, I go king b5, rook b1, rook b4, building the bridge, shielding the pawn where it can promote. And after takes, this pawn is 1 square too late as it gets to g2, but I can move my queen to g8, capture the pawn, and win the game. So after I play the move king c4, Fabiano throws in the towel. He resigns in this position. With this win, this means that I take a 1-0 lead in the classical match. Tomorrow we will come back and play another game. Fabiano will have the white pieces. I will have the black pieces. The situation is very simple. If I draw or win, I win the entire tournament. If Fabiano beats me with the white pieces, we go to a blitz tiebreaker. If we do get to the blitz tiebreaker, Fabiano will have to beat me there and then win another rapid and or blitz match the following day. So I'm doing very well. The odds are in my favor, but there is still one more day of work left to be done. Nonetheless, it's great to get a big win against Fabiano with the white pieces and take the lead in the match. It wasn't a clean game, but it was good enough. So, on that note, I hope you guys have enjoyed this recap from the first game of the grand final of the American Cup being held here in St. Louis, Missouri. If you are not already subscribed to the channel, make sure that you smash that subscribe button below, and we'll be back with a recap or recaps in the coming days as the American Cup starts to wind down. Hope you guys enjoyed it and have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you tomorrow. See you. Bye.